Hey everybody, it's John Kadlic from Parallel Path with the latest edition of Trail Talks. Today I'm at High Banks Metro Park, north of Columbus, with my good friend Zach Thompson. Zach and I met many years ago when he was in the athletics department at the school where my children went, and has now gone on to do some amazing things, and right now is the founder at Scatterjoy, which I'm going to have him explain better than I could. But thanks for joining me today and going on a little walk and talk here in the woods.
Yeah. This is a dream come true, honestly. Just a good conversation in the woods, man.
This is what I like to do for all the times.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you could join me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for those that are not familiar with Scatterjoy, I don't want to do my own attempt at doing it. Why don't you talk a little bit about your background, what Scatterjoy is about, and then we can get into it a bit.
Yeah, so I've lived a lot of lives professionally. I mean, you were mentioning that I was in the athletic department at Wellington School, and after that I transitioned. I started traveling and speaking around the country about like social emotional learning, servant leadership, suicide prevention, mental health awareness and stuff. I worked in a church for 2 years after that, and then from the church I was a next generation director at one church here in Columbus, and then from that felt like the pull, I would say, to start Scatterjoy. And it's a mental health nonprofit. Really the goal of it is to make mental health care more accessible and affordable for all. That's our mission statement, and I think the two most important words in that are the last two, for all. It's just something that just really like is our heartbeat within the organization, within my life, of trying to live as inclusive as possible and inviting and open armed. And there's a lot of things that get in the way of people getting help, especially with affordability, accessibility. There's obviously the stigma around mental health, and we didn't want to just like create awareness around mental health. I often say, like, if awareness was the solution with the mental health crisis, we wouldn't have a crisis anymore. Like, awareness is at an all-time high.
Well said.
And so, but so are statistics. And so I think it takes creative action to pull people from awareness to action. It's one thing to start a conversation. It's one thing to empower people. It's one thing to engage people in a way to make them feel like they're not alone. But it's another thing to equip them with the resources and the tools to find the help that they need to actually like feel a little bit more whole in their life again. And so Scatterjoy just kind of came from this feeling of like, what the heck is getting in the way of people getting help? And I remember in 2020, it was like COVID shut down. My wife Molly and I, we just had our first kid, our daughter Cooper, and I started to feel like probably the whole world a little bit of fraction with my own mental health and stuff. And so I started to get into poetry again and reading. I've always loved Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he has a quote that I read at that time in a book called The Conduct of Life. And it says, "There's no beautifier of a complexion, form, or behavior like the wish to scatter joy and not pain around us." And for some reason, Scatterjoy just like jumped off the page at me. Yeah, you've probably been there in your life before. It's like, it like haunts you, you know? And I didn't know if it was going to be like a new keynote. I didn't know if it was going to be a blog post series. I didn't know if it was just going to be like a flag that I ordered from Oxford Pennant and I just hang it up in my office and that's it. But it turns out it's all those things and more. I even got Scatterjoy like printed on a couple t-shirts just for me. And I just started rocking them around Columbus, and people were like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, what is that?" I'm like, "I don't really know what it is." And so, yeah, we just sat on it for a year and launched an apparel line, because that's the only way that I really knew how to raise money for it. And I knew a little bit about apparel. I also wanted to create something that created some semblance of activism and advocacy for people. Like, if you buy a t-shirt, you help us raise money for the resources that we want to fund someday. But then also, you become an instant advocate by wearing the t-shirt or wearing the hoodie. And so we did that January 2021, and then the first collection sold out in 2 days, and we were like, "Oh man,
we're on to
something." Yeah. So
you have so many aspects of this that I want to spend time discussing and working our way through the windstorm here in the woods. But you answered one of my questions. I was like, sort of, what was the inspiration behind this? It sounds like you had a good experience at the church that kind of opened your eyes and mind to it, and then you had a personal experience during COVID, like a lot of people did.
Yeah.
And maybe those combination of things and, this organic development, sort of figuring it out as you went, looking for inspiration in a variety of places. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think I've always struggled with mental health in my life, and I grew up in the athletic scene where, if you're a man and an athlete, it's the weakest thing that you can be is weak. You know what I'm saying? Like it's like I don't know if I can explain that in a way where it's like you have to have this like bravado and toughness and strength about you, and I always felt weird about that. Like I was always a big feeler. I was always like really emotional as a kid. And I think through athletics and through like my pursuit of athletics within college and then even within like training athletes, I just started to approach it differently when I became a coach. Like it was never about like performance to me. It was always now more about like the holistic person. Like, how do you come together as a person through this? What are you learning? Like, how is it acceptable to like face failure and defeat and like not feel insignificant about yourself? And that was something that I had always struggled with. I was diagnosed with anxiety disorder when I was in 7th grade. My uncle had passed away, and that really like sparked it. And so there's been all these like tracing moments, and even when I graduated from undergrad, I played baseball in college, and I was diagnosed with long story short, I was diagnosed with a life-threatening heart condition called ARVC. I had a defibrillator implanted when I was 23, and within the first 3 months, it went off 3 times and saved me from cardiac arrest.
Jeez,
and so
Zach.
there's just been like through lines of like struggle and sorrow and pain. But I think like what I've always found through community and through people that have supported me is like, what is the pathway towards hope? And I think like that's what we want Scattered Joy to be. Like, yes, there's pain and struggle and sorrow in the world, but like also there's people that want to like rally around you and like pull you towards a more hopeful future. And so there's a lot of inspiration points to it. I don't think there's not a direct through line from something, but there's all these things in my life that I think pull towards what Scattered Joy continues to grow into.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
I have a couple things specific to what you guys do that I really want to dig into, because there's a number of mental health, whatever you want to call them, advocacy organizations, movements, foundations, nonprofits. You've done a couple things that I think are different. One is you sort of have this, just call it multimedia approach. You sell merch, you have a newsletter, of course you seek donations, you offer, importantly, support mechanisms. You put on these performances, let's say. You'll have a better word for that, because I want to come back to this intersection of creativity and mental health. But was that all sort of very intentional, or has it been like, hey, what if we did this? What if we did that? I always get curious about how these things come to be and your unique perspective on it.
Yeah, I think within the world of mental health and healthcare in general, I think specifically with mental health, branding matters within organizations, and language matters within like the story that you're trying to tell and the story that you're trying to bring people through. And so for us, like, we didn't want to show up in a way where we looked, functioned, and sounded like a medical organization. Like, we wanted to make the conversation around mental health more approachable for people, especially like a younger demographic. Like, I mean, like really anyone, honestly. I mean, I think medical branding, not to knock organizations or businesses or corporations, but I think medical branding within the mental health lane can increase the stigma for a lot of people. It did for me, at least. And so for us, like, we wanted to create it more as like a lifestyle brand that people could have a lot of front doors into. Like, hey, that's a cool shirt, Scattered Joy, what does that mean? And they buy it and wear it and create a conversation around it. And then maybe that is like the front door into the organization where they're either supporting or finding help. The events, it's the same way. Like some people might not come to a workshop where they want to learn, hey, here's 5 ways to overcome anxiety, but they do want to come to an event where there's spoken word artists or live musicians or a panel discussion around like creative entrepreneurship and how that relates to mental health and emotional health and well-being and community care. And so same thing with the newsletter. And I think like there is, for a long time, mental health has been like separated from even like physical health, from the body, from even like our lives and culture. It's been like pushed off to the side and said like, well, I'll manage that, but it's separate from everything else that's going on. I think what we're trying to do is like wrap it back in and say everything that we do, everything that we are, like impacts our mental and emotional well-being in some way. And so we're really just trying to make it more approachable for people. I always go, like if I'm traveling and speaking at an organization or we set up an experience, we went to South by Southwest last year and set up an experience there. And it's like we're pitching the brand and telling the story about everything. And often people would come up and be like, Scatter Joy, what is this? Like, what? Tell me, what is this? And I'm like, actually, we're a mental health nonprofit. We don't look like one. Let me tell you why. And so it's just like, it's just a really fun way to engage with people because I think it spikes curiosity a little bit more. So yeah.
Well, that name is great and the inspiration behind it's great. It's not just a made up thing.
Yeah, thank you.
And I could see, part of what you're doing, and I think needs to happen in this space, is sparking conversation. So even just the phrase or the t-shirt or the hat or the whatever, it's more approachable, like you're saying. And then do you notice, I'd be curious, because we have our own observations, because we spend some of our time in the mental health space, and we're obviously advocates of brand building and marketing more broadly, so like you're this great confluence of things. But I'm curious, in your work, have you noticed, significant differences between genders or generations, for instance? And what I mean, like Gen Z, mental health is, we're okay talking about it, and it's an integrated part of our life, generalizing a bit, but more so than prior generations who are like, I'm not going to talk about it, or a man versus a woman or anything. I assume you see those in your own work? Yeah,
a little bit. I mean, like when it's actually interesting, like from a social media following standpoint, from who engages with us the most, it's an age demographic of like 24 to 40. And that is like the primary like age demographic that really like pulls their attention inward towards like what we have to say and who we are and what we're doing. When we do go set up different experiences and stuff, it's interesting because like we get a whole like collection of people asking about it, and I think from an instance, like if people are engaging with us in a way, they have a ounce of interest in mental health in general. So from an older demographic, I think we get like cheered on the most.
Oh, interesting.
Because it's like, hey, wow, this is so
Thank
important.
God you're here, kind of thing.
Because they've woken up to the crisis a little bit, and they know that it wasn't really accepted and talked about when they were growing up. But then from a younger generation, they're just like, oh, this is cool.
Tell me more.
Yeah. How do I like get involved? Oh, I'll come to that event. Like they relate to it more, and then an older demographic kind of feels like cheerleader, rah, like, hey, this is awesome what you guys are doing. This is so needed. So I think that's kind of what we've seen from a demographic standpoint. I think what's really cool and what we try to do, even with events and stuff, is we really do believe those 2 words, for all. And I know from a marketing standpoint, it's like kind of frowned upon to not niche down. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But I really do believe in that for all concept, because we do have at our events like a wide array of like age demographic. We even have like parents bringing their kids in sometimes too. And so, and at our events as well, it's like, I think the beautiful thing about Scatter Joy is we have a Christian hip hop artist and spoken word artist, and then we have a Buddhist activist and author, and then we have an LGBTQ author and poet. And it's just like, it's this beautiful picture of what I think the world should and can be like.
Yeah.
So,
And in that sense, that's not marketing. That's like the ethos of who you guys are and what
Yeah.
you're trying to do. I mean,
yeah,
I think it was a church organization many years ago that had a phrase that I was like, it says, wherever you are in your journey in life, we're here for you, or something like that. So it was sort of not trying to close the door on anybody.
yeah.
And it sounds like you got a similar DNA.
Yeah, we want to, it's, you know, in my background, I worked at a church for 2 years, and so like when we launched Scattered Joy, everyone was asking like, oh, hey, is it a religious organization? And I was like, actually, it's strategically not.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we don't want it to be a religious organization, and it's not like, you know, if you come to an event, there'll be a few cuss words like laid out, and like there'll be some different things probably not acceptable in a church setting, but like we want it to be as like open-armed and inviting as possible.
Yeah.
We just want to show people empathy, compassion, care, hope, joy, all those different things that can exist within or outside of religion or anything like that. It is just, it's what I believe the world can look like.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're trying to do is create like this little ecosystem of those things, those characteristics, and hopefully it just like bubbles out and people feel the need or feel the inspiration to go scatter joy in their life, whatever that looks like. So,
Well, talk to me about, I mean, one of the most interesting things you guys do is this fusion with the creative space. And I forgot the word you called your company, a creative mental health movement.
Yeah, we call ourselves the Creative Mental Health Company.
Yeah. So like, how did that come to be? Because you don't see
Yeah.
that every day, and I think that's also part of the invitation to people is like,
Yeah.
come see creative people talking about things of interest to you, and it's that's why I almost use the word performance.
Yep.
Maybe erroneously, but it kind of feels like that way. It's like fun, something I want to seek out to do.
Yeah.
Hear a poet or hear a musician and then tackle tough topics.
Yeah, our team is just a bunch of like creative artists in their own right. And so that came about like pretty unintentionally. Like we started Scatter Joy and we were like 2 years in. It was like 2023 when we first started saying that about the organization. But it was interesting when we started it and our storytelling within like our marketing, within the events that we were hosting, within just our social media and our apparel, creative artists and creative people were kind of like flocking to the mission and the vision and the storytelling and the organization. And so then we started to like kind of work with some of the creative artists, and we would work on projects. We did a mental health awareness campaign with a creative director for the New York Times T-Brand Studios, Joel Leon. He's an advocate for us now too. But we built a whole campaign with him in partnership. And so we've always kind of had this creative DNA within us. We just didn't become like really aware of it and like went all in with it until 2023. And we just like really kind of went through a deep dive within like our storytelling of like, hey, if we're pitching ourselves to people, like what is one way that we can really concisely tell people what we're about, who we are, and what they can kind of expect when they come in contact with anything Scatter Joy. And that felt like the most concise way to package it. Like we are the Creative Mental Health Company. We have creative solutions to help you get help, but we're also going to package it in a way that's like creative storytelling, whether it's like through our apparel, through our events, through our media, digital media, stuff like that. And I think there's this interesting thing where it's like the creative arts and mental health, there's this natural intersection between the two. Creative artists, they tell stories at the base level of like pain, struggle, and sorrow, or it's inspired by hope and joy and love, and then they try to tell the human experience in between or communicate that. And I think like any creative art is mental and emotional health. And so I think like people heal through that from creating and then also from consuming. And so we think that like if that it can be a tool to help people like get through and navigate their own story.
Yeah.
Our tagline from the beginning was there's strength in your story. And so there's always been this like story element.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
do you believe that you can access hope? Like, do you believe that you can access joy? Do you believe that you can rewrite your story? And we feel like that's our job to do. Like, we feel like our job is to like put our arm around people, hold their hand, and help them like navigate and rewrite their story, or see the strength that they've built through the things that they've gone through in their past. And so, yeah, we've always kind of had this aspect of it. And so last year we jumped all in and started hosting those events.
I want to hear about those. So I know you told me a little bit about it before we pressed record, but like, what happens at an event?
Yeah, so we started this event series where we do like a monthly free event called Studio Stories. And so basically it is just that. It's like exploring the natural intersection between the creative arts and mental health. And so we'll invite local or national artists in. They'll do some sort of performance, whether it's a spoken word artist, poet, author, singer-songwriter, creative entrepreneur, muralist, any type of modality. We'll invite them in, they'll do some sort of performance, and then we'll have a sit-down conversation about like their journey with mental health. And so it's really cool because you can like see and feel their story through the art that they create.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I think spoken word poetry is like therapy to me.
Yeah.
You know, like I love it. But you can like feel their story, you can feel their journey, you can feel the highs and lows, you get an inside look in what they've experienced. And I think the creative arts does something really interesting too. It just unlocks empathy.
Yeah.
Like if you want to create a more empathetic and understanding world, I think you do that through two things. You do that through traveling, and then you do that through creative arts.
Yeah.
Because you get to see other people's lives and worlds and stuff. And so that's a goal of those events. And then we get to dive deeper into it, and we get to talk about like, hey, I noticed like you said this in this poem, this really stood out to me. Can you explain that further? Like what was going on in your life at that time? And we've had some really great conversations and moments in those.
And then your bigger events, how do they differ, or do they differ? Like I know you got one coming up and stuff like that.
Yeah, not really. This one coming up, we have one on April 11th. I'm not sure when you'll post this or not.
Me either.
But,
so we'll figure it out.
April 11th. If it's still coming up, go ahead and come through. If it's past, you'll see the highlights of it. But yeah, April 11th is a little different. We're not doing any sit-down combos with this one. This one's a little longer run. It's our first one of 2025. So we just have 6 or 7 different poets and authors coming in, and they're just gonna do like 15 minutes each of like readings or new works or poems or new things, essays that they've been working on. So we have like a hip hop artist coming in, and he's gonna take like some of his songs and like strip them down to more spoken word performance. We have an essayist coming in, a couple poets, spoken word artists. Yeah, it's gonna be really fun.
That sounds super cool.
Yeah.
We can probably turn around here so we're not getting too far in
Cool.
the wilderness.
Yeah.
And I'll flip around this way.
Yep.
So what are, I'm on the support side.
Yep.
So talk to me just about what you think there. You clearly are thinking about affordability and access
Yep.
for all.
Yep.
I've seen on your site, obviously, access to a lot of resources and so forth. But how do you sort of buttress the movement through the support side of things?
Yeah, so with Scatter Joy, we're talking about like, okay, the 3 main things are stigma, accessibility, and affordability. How do you create resources to support people in those 3 ways? We think that our digital media and our storytelling supports the stigma side of things. But we also use that to help fund the resources that we have for accessibility and affordability. We were able to fund in the first year crisis text line in partnership with the National Crisis Text Line. So anyone can text Scatter to 741-741, and they're instantly connected to a crisis counselor for free 24/7. And that's just like text message conversation, which is way easier than going to see a therapist for people that are hesitant or that need it right now, instantly. And so we have that resource, and that's been an amazing thing to see some of the responses and some of the statistics around that, with like hundreds of people being able to access that. And so we have what we call our Find Help Network, which is a nationwide search engine that connects people to free and reduced cost care. So really anyone can go to our website, our Find Help page, and they can search any keyword that they need, whether that's counselor, therapist, anxiety, depression, addiction services. You can even search housing services on there too. And it populates, you type in the keyword and your zip code, and it populates all the free and reduced cost programs in your area. And you can filter that down for specific needs there too. Really what we kind of think of ourselves is really an extension of those organizations too. Not a lot of people know about the hundreds of organizations that offer free and reduced support in our city, or in Austin, Texas, or in Charlotte, or in Vegas, but like we can help shine light and connect people to them. And so we really feel like we're kind of like a middleman of like, hey, like we're basically the front end of the solution is, let's make this conversation and the topic of mental health and seeking help as approachable as it can be. And then once you get in, like we are going to direct you and help support you to find the help that you need professionally. And so we have that resource. And then last year we were able to launch a therapy fund where people can apply for financial assistance if they deem that like that is the barrier to seeing a therapist or a counselor, because that is the barrier for so many people. And so they can apply. That's predicated on donations, community support, and so we open that up twice a year, and it's really like a first come first serve model, where we support people in 3 to 6 therapy sessions for them, and we pay the provider directly with that support on their behalf. So that's really like how we help pull people into action. We are not providers. We're not a mental health
supporters.
expert.
Yeah.
We do have like therapists on our board and stuff like that. But like I think our goal and mission is that word, like we want to connect with people, and then we want to connect people with professionals in the best way that we can.
What do you think is something most people don't know about mental health and probably should? Spending this time in Scatterjoy yourself and having your own personal experience, I'd be curious what you'd say.
Yeah, I think we're kind of in a loneliness epidemic right now. I think this is rare, like what we're doing.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you want to come like take a walk and we'll just talk the whole time? and I think what the world has done is we've made like we've tried to invent things for greater connection, but I think they have further separated us. Social media, different things like that, they have caused greater isolation, in my opinion. And so I think like we are in the center of a loneliness epidemic, and loneliness to me is like a foundational level of mental and emotional well-being. There was a Harvard study that came out and said that if you're lonely, it's actually more dangerous than smoking for your overall health.
I saw that.
And so it's like, okay, if we want to live long and healthy lives, then we need to be connected in genuine community and feel supported through that. And so I think more than anything, I think like that is what Scatterjoy is fueled by too, and why we try to get together in community, and why we're trying to think of new ways to like bring community together and kind of like give people an excuse to come together. So yeah, I mean, that's surprising and not surprising, right? The loneliness aspect of mental health, because I think like for me, looking back on my mental health journey, of course I was in probably the greatest despair or depression when I felt the most isolated. But what's interesting is mental health kind of tricks you into thinking that you're alone. And even though you know the statistics, like 1 in 5 American adults experience a diagnosed mental illness. That doesn't include generalized anxiety and depression. That is a lot of people.
Big number.
It's a huge number. but still like we feel so isolated in our own struggle for some reason. And so it's like, how do you create spaces that I think do something really impactful that people can like speak into existence? Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Like I've been through that too. And I think like that doesn't really exist right now. Or if it does exist in the echo chamber of social media, it's really easy to point the finger at people and kind of like bully them and shame them into like speaking their mind rather than making them feel connected.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder to do that face to face. And so what we're trying to do is just, get people in proximity, really feel connected, inspire them to go do that in their own community too.
So what would you say? You're an optimistic guy. Scatter Joy is your organization's name, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
Like, as you look on the horizon, you see a lot of things. Do you see some reasons for optimism? You see progress being made, or like, where's the silver lining as far as you're concerned, or do you just think we're in for tough work for a long time?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think there's a lot of people really scared right now. I think when fear is a fear is needed for courage to exist.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if people honor doubt or fear or a certain unbelief about some change that needs to happen, if they honor that, I think they can become inspired and encouraged to create change that they want to see. And so I think that's why I'm personally optimistic, is because to me, action always eliminates anxiety. Like whenever I'm feeling anxious about something, the cure for me is to just go do it.
Yeah.
Like go figure it out, go create it. I think one of the greatest things that I've like kind of rerun and anchored in my mind is you create what you wish you had in the world. And so that's what Scatter Joy is. Like, I wish I had this kind of support, or I wish I had this kind of organization that was making mental health more approachable for me and connecting dots for me to professional help, because I never received that when I was younger. And so to me, that's like kind of what I find hope in right now, and I find optimism in right now, is I think there's a lot of people that for good reason are feeling a little anxious or feeling a little scared or doubtful about like the trajectory of our culture and society. But I think that's the jump off point. Like that is the trampoline, that's the catapult into greater optimism and greater hope. Doesn't mean like this work is easy by any means. But I think what keeps me going is, I think, the hope that I can help other people. And so I think that's where my optimism comes from.
That's good.
I guess.
Some of the best organizations are built by people who saw a void for themselves and wanted to fill that void.
Yeah.
And they're probably inspired more than a typical quote-unquote business owner might be, because it's a passion. It's at your core.
Yeah, we when we started out, we called it our compassion project. You know, it wasn't just a passion. Like it wasn't like, you know, I'm passionate about sports. You know, I'm passionate about a lot of different people.
Right.
But I think this is the thing that I used to actually travel and speak on quite a bit, is how do you find your purpose in life? I think you find your purpose by asking yourself, what are you most compassionate about?
Yeah, that's good delineation,
you know? And
between
so it's
passion and compassion.
Yeah, what are you willing to like really suffer with people on? Like, what are you willing to like cry over and walk with people in sorrow through? And I think that's when you're like the most alive. That's when you're making the most impact in the world. And yeah, I think like that's what's gotten Scatter Joy through 3-4 years now. Just continuing to stay really compassionate about the work.
So I always like to sort of bring these to a close with a question about what's one thing you do for your own personal well-being.
Yeah.
And it might be a whole bunch of things, but is there one thing that's sort of non-negotiable or is like extra important to you?
Yeah, to me, I am a better husband, father, friend. I'm a better leader, I guess, if I'm spending time to read.
Oh, that's cool.
You know, like I don't know what it is about it, but if I'm reading something, it can be fiction, nonfiction, self-help, something like that, I just feel and see a change in my spirit. And so that's a non-negotiable for me. It's something that I never like grew up really loving, you know, like it's just like
Most people would probably say that.
yeah,
Reading
read
is
a book. What?
Yeah, right.
But for me, it's like, yeah, it's just this foundational thing now that, you know, I have to do.
And is it ritualized? Like, do you do it at a certain time every day, every week, or is it just whenever you get open space?
I used to before we had kids.
Well, fair enough. Fair enough.
Now it's usually like
Whenever you could find a minute.
Yeah. When the kids go to bed, that's a good time. And my wife Molly is getting me into a little bit more fiction because I stayed pretty concrete in the self-help philosophy world for a long time, and she was like, I think you'd do good with reading some fiction.
You sound like me. That's my orbit. And
Yeah.
when I venture into fiction, I actually find it wonderful.
Oh,
but
it's amazing.
It's intimidating to me.
Yeah.
So I like to take recommendations from people versus taking my chances.
There you go. The next one on the list is A Little Life. I'll have
Okay.
to check that one out.
All right.
It's about, I don't know who it's by.
Okay,
I forget
A
the
Little Life.
author. A novel that, and this could be a really bad description, this is what I know of it. It is a novel about adult male friendship.
Oh, cool.
Which isn't really like told,
Sure.
you know? And so I think that's why I'm excited to read it. Because that's something that I feel like in my life, it's like, well, once you have kids, you reach mid-30s, and then you're not really around like as consistently that core group of friends anymore. And so it's like, how do you be intentional about like staying connected, not feeling isolated, not feeling lonely? So I'm excited to read that book and see what's up.
That's super cool. You have to tell me about it because
Yeah.
I was looking for that next recommendation.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we could reconnect. It's
Yeah.
been a long time, way too long, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of the work you guys are doing through Scatterjoy, and it's so impressive what you've built and what you're continuing to build. And now knowing the backstory and sort of the focus that you've put against this, it's just really super inspiring.
Yeah. Thanks so much, John.
Yeah, so I hope we can do this again someday with an
Absolutely.
update on the progress that's being made through
Yeah.
Scatterjoy. So,
Yeah. Well,
thanks.
I'll come out to Boulder and we'll do round 2.
Yeah, most people say the same thing. They're like, we like Ohio, but if we could do the next round in Boulder or somewhere in Colorado, that seems pretty good. So, but thanks for the time.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
All right, everybody, that's this edition of Trail Talks. We'll see you out on the trail again sometime soon. Take care.